Thanks for tapping in. Like, subscribe, and share as you roll in. We are continuing with this doctorate study, and I'm on the last document for this pre intensive assignment from a couple months ago. So, we're going to read through a little bit of this, kind of talk through it as we go. And I'm going to take some notes to satisfy the requirement for the actual assignment, and we'll take it from there. So, this is the last one. Looks like 23 pages of goodness. Probably won't make it through all of this today. Down to page 19. Rest is footnotes and stuff. Okay, cool. But yeah, the class is discipleship and worldview. And this one here, I skimmed through the first page um, just really briefly, and I already know this is going to bring up some interesting stuff for commentary. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump in. It's a really good point. So right off the bat, I don't know how much this is just the introduction, right? So he's not getting into the meat and potatoes of his argument yet, but this part right here, in our culture of consumerism, the devotional life has become a product. That right there, we may not like to hear that, but it's true. Flat out, it's true. And one of the areas where this hurts us is if the devotional life is a product, it's something that you can get, it's something you need to upgrade, it's something that you always need the newest version or edition of, and it's something that's readily available in primarily in the form of purchase. So the issue becomes, are you actually looking at the things you get in that devotional as things that will change your life and your experience? Or is it something that you're investing in and you're engaging in for that moment, but once you're done reading it, you go on to the next thing? I have several devotional books in my shelf, and oddly enough, you tend to only go through them once. But really, if if they're that good, you shouldn't need the newest and the latest and the next. Like, everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel with something that doesn't end up actually translating into something that people want to take advantage of or keep coming back to. And that's where I can see the issue with this um, consumerism mentality when it comes to the devotional life. It isn't an actual part of our lives. It's a product that we get to supplement it at times. And when we go through this 365-day plan, we go into the next one. Write that down to start at least. Many vendors offering what they promise will restart, change your devotional life, charge or change your devotional life. That's true. Posing the question: why do Christians hold up? Yet the devotional genre is expanding because the present need is so great. That's a really interesting statement to consider. But I think it's more interesting, not just because it's expanding, but you look at the reason behind that. The need. or perhaps the actual need is not being met. So people are trying to expand the reach, trying to address what they think it is. Let's talk about this. Let's make a devotional on that subject. Let's focus on that area. But maybe they're missing the point. Maybe they're missing the overall point of what the devotion and the devotional experience should be. See where it goes. So he wants to broaden the definition of devotion. His argument is rooted in his belief that many Christians are dissatisfied with their devotional lives, not because they lack active practices of devotion, but because they define. I could see that. Maybe there are people who are doing things that, with a broader definition, would be considered devotion, but because devotions have been defined so narrowly, they don't see it that way. And to kind of speak to that, I guess even my own experience viewing or having a perspective of devotions shared with me where it's this thing that you have first thing in the morning. If you don't have it first thing in the morning, it isn't devotion. If you miss it, you messed up. And you're already behind the eight ball in situations like that. So I can see where that argument may come from to a degree. We'll have to see how he continues breaking it down, but we just get warmed up here. All right, so we get to the definition. Let's see what he's got. All right, so this is where reading these articles gets fun because at least for me, I'm already getting a sense of I don't know if I'm going to agree with where he's going with this. Obviously, 19 pages. I'm on page 2, so we'll have to see. But this part right here, reading and meditating on scripture, that is our primary understanding of devotion. I do agree with that. Um, and he says the definition is a bit narrow, which I also agree with. He says he's not saying that it's wrong, just that it may be too narrow. But my question when I hear that being said is to what end? What is the purpose of expanding it? Because in my mind, when I hear that, it almost sounds like he wants to get away from this as the primary understanding of devotion. But my question being to what end? I have that one because I think that all these other things that he mentions up here, uh, gardening, recycling trash, putting up flyers to coordinate neighborhood cleanup, all those things, which are maybe expressions of devotion or forms of devotion, as he says, they may not be the same as the direct line connection to God in that sense. So it almost seems like one might be the input for devotion and the other might be the output or the expression of devotion. And it sounds like he's trying to put them all into the same bucket. So we'll see. Okay. So, in summary, here, devotion here is more than a contemplative life, meditating on the scriptures. It also involves an active life, manifesting the work of the Spirit in the world. I think I can agree with that. He's speaking towards the practical aspect, right? Um, Most of us, like I said, I agree with his former statement when he says the prayer and the Bible reading tends to dominate our understanding of what devotion is. And that is very much a consumerist approach to it as opposed to what you can give. So, yeah, I think I think he's making a good argument here, which is helping expand my mind on maybe what he means and how I see devotion. So I'm gonna take a note on that too. Chocolate, yes. Yeah, that's fair too. Context is key. The narrow definition, it does only cater to a certain time and place and situation. If devotion is reading and meditating on scripture, it does imply literacy. And if literacy is not high, if literacy rates are low and scriptures are not readily available, then you can't, like, it doesn't make sense to call that devotional life because it wouldn't apply to everyone. Right. Yeah, right. Historically, even when literacy rates were low and the scriptures were not readily available, God's people had lives of devotion. That is true. That's a good contrast here. All right. Yeah, so I like this. Sums it up here. One, devotion more as a state of being. Ah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're always going to get me when you start talking about being versus doing. So, back initially, when he talked about our narrow definition of devotion, he talked about it as scripture reading and prayer. So, devotion defined by the things that we do as opposed to who we are, right? So, if devotion is just what we do, we're always going to be looking to do the next thing. There's always going to be more that we can do or something different that we can do. That goes back to the first page, talking about how easy it is to get so many different devotional books. And once you finish going through one, it's a new year, you buy a new devotional book. But here, if devotion is about who we are, then it's our orientation towards God, scripture, those things, prayer, communion, that relationship with Him. But it doesn't just stop there. That state of being results in us doing something. So it's the classic thing. It isn't the doing that defines the being. That's the first scenario where, hey, if I do this, if I do this, if I do this, then it means I'm this. Not necessarily, but we flip it. And because this is who we are being, there's a natural outflow of the things that we end up doing. Yep, that's fair. Psalm 1, right? But it connects the contemplation with the action. Yeah, if you're using Psalm 1 in the light of devotion here, this statement right here, he is like a tree planted by the streams of water. He yields its fruit in its season. His leaf also does not wither. And all it does, he prospers. This is the verse that encapsulates this. It's a state of being that results in a natural outflow. The tracks. I think this is important. The psalm does not leave the believer in a private moment drawn from the public world. I think I talked in a previous one of the previous articles about how the ascetics and the monks back in the Middle Ages, um, they were known for this because they wanted to be close to God. They literally withdrew from the rest of humanity out into the desert and built their own entire communities out there. And it's like, great, you want to be close to God, that's cool, and I'm happy for you. But if anybody else who wanted to get closer to that experience, these people didn't weren't going out there to gain something and coming back in to be around the other people. They stayed out there. If anybody else wanted it, they had to go to them, which sounds more consumerist. You want this experience, this is what you have to do to obtain it. Less about being. We're more about being, they would have decided, okay, I want to be somebody who's existing in my present time and place, but I'm better connected to God. So you go to the place that it takes you to do that, and then you come back and you be that person in your space, and you help others do the same thing. That's discipleship. I'm serious. So that's like a key phrase. Yeah, it's a good perspective. Like, it's a stage one and a stage two, right? So you have the deep reverence aspect of it, but you're not caught up in that moment. You're there and you gain something from that, but you have to leave that moment and bring the things that you've learned out into the rest of your experience. Otherwise, it doesn't really benefit anyone. And you almost even have to ask, if something is only a benefit to you, is it really a benefit to you? Something to consider. What this reminds me of is I talked about going to the other church in my neighborhood growing up, how being in there one Sabbath and listening to the pastor say something that would have gotten all the conservative Christians immensely upset. He said that if there was an opportunity to help build like a homeless shelter or something on the Sabbath, he would do it. And it was not only a reflection of Jesus saying, if you're going to um, pull a cow or an ox or something out of a ditch on the Sabbath, and you can't do that for a human, you're tripping. Like, he's talking about the practical expression of their supposed devotion, right? But this is what it plays into. It's more than just believing something. It has to be applicable. If you things about who God is, and if you focus on his traits, his love, his kindness, the fruits of the spirit, and you never put yourself in positions to exercise them or to share them with other people, for as long as you stay in that place, it hasn't benefited anyone else, and it really truly hasn't benefited you. Because the real benefit would be saying, "Oh wow, this is such a blessing for me. I'm going to go share this with somebody else." That's how you know it's really been a blessing. You think about movies today, right? More often than not, I heard it in a video I was watching. It was talking about Superman and Marvel, Fantastic Four, the movies that came out these past several weeks, and it's like somebody put it in a really interesting perspective. Like, for some of these movies, the very first weekend opening night, that's when you have all the nerds, like all the comic book people, all the real fans will show up. And then he said, in the repeat weeks, that's when you usually have the normies go, or more percentage of them. In other words, you're going to have people show up because they're fans and they really love something, right? But based on their response, based on the word of mouth that happens from that initial viewing of a film, more people will go or less people will go if the word of mouth is not that strong, right? So it ends up naturally, you gained an experience that was so beneficial that it had a practical impact on how you lived your life after that moment. Something filled you up and you had to go share it with somebody else. you see a great movie, I don't know anybody who's seen a great movie and they won't talk about it. I mean, we all have that friend who's a stand for this movie or this franchise or this TV show or whatever, and all they do is talk about it, and they're trying to convince everybody to go see it. That's a sense of devotion, and in a very practical sense, that's what Christian devotion should do for people if it's really impacting them in a good way. My favorite movie of all time is Gladiator, and I think everybody should watch it. I say that because of the experience I had for it. It would make no sense for me to say that's my favorite movie and then not follow it up by saying people should watch it or people shouldn't. Like that doesn't make any sense. I'm tracking with what he's saying here. It does make sense. The definition initially, I didn't know if I was going to agree, but the way that he's framing it, I'm tending to agree. We still a few pages in, still plenty to go, so we'll see where it goes. But so far, so good. Hey, Lamine, back in the chat. Probably going to be in later. Got to get some homework done now, but we'll be in later for sure. Yeah. It's an input and an outcome, an input and an outcome. It's not just all input, and it isn't just like stasis in a single place. That's not what real devotion is. Devotion is more than belief. Yeah, deep reverence for particular teaching that manifests itself in contemplative or active practices out in the world. It has an output. And, you know, when you think of even that statement, how many things out there do people say that they're devoted to, right? Think of relationships, think of marriages. People are like, I'm devoted to so and so. I'm devoted to her. She's devoted to him, etc. And yet, if somebody just said that all the time and there was never any action that followed up on the statement, you'd have questions. You wouldn't buy it. But a lot of times, because of who people are, they don't even have to say it. You can see it. You can see the practical expression of the devotion, so you know that that person is devoted. So you can kind of see it from that perspective and work it backwards when we're talking about devotion. When we're talking about devotion is more than belief. So interesting, absolutely interesting concept. What do we have an hour in here? This thing wants to turn off. I think it's because I'm talking. I need to find something non copyright to play in the background. This thing on. Let me see what YouTube has for me. I can get away with some lo-fi. Yeah, I think broadening this definition, it does give us a better way of seeing, because he's really bringing up a good point here. If we talk about who's devoted and if our churches or our spiritual community is devoted to something, are we making that statement based on them all reading the same thing or making the same statement? They're all in agreement with something, or is it based on how we see them living? So it's easy, as he says here, it's easy to make the statement without actually acting on it. That's what Jesus had an issue with the Pharisees for, the religious leaders who said a lot of things, but in the background they were doing different things. So it was evident that they weren't devoted to the things that they professed. But that's the thing. If we are devoted to the things that we profess, oftentimes we don't even need to profess them. That's why mission in this context can be so powerful, because if people see that you move different, that you live different, your life, the action, the devotion that you exercise in your day to day, it invites the question because people aren't familiar with what it is that you believe. They see that the consistency of your action, your flow, the way that you are, the way that you engage with other people, how you speak, they see that these things are different than what they're used to, but they don't know why. So it invites the question, and people will come to you, and you can go to them and share these things in that context, as opposed to just coming out and saying, here's what I believe, you should believe it too. That's very ineffective. Like, people want to see it. It's the same thing that they say about movies, right? Every single movie breakdown that you look at, everyone's always talking about show don't tell. Show don't tell. They don't want these long expositions on what happened in the past. They want the flashback. Show me, don't tell me. And if you can show more sure if you can show more people what you're devoted to, as opposed to telling more people what you're devoted to, showing a lot more in line with being, and telling is a lot more in line with doing. I think more people would be interested in what we had to say if they could see by who we are and the things that we are doing as a result of who we are, that we're different. Need to take a note on that. Yeah, see, he's talking about marriage here. That's a good perspective as well. Not just their marriage, but the idea of marriage, which means that not only are they going to put in the work and try to live in a way that respects the bounds of that marriage, but they're also going to make sure that no one else is invited into that. Everyone else is excluded from that, if you know what I mean. Talk about affairs and all this kind of drama, infidelity today. People people who get married and then end up cheating, they might have professed, they might have made a statement on what they think about marriage and put on a show to try to tell you what they believe about marriage. And yet the fact that they were able to justify the cheating or whatever, I don't know the circumstances in every situation, but in most cases, I don't know if you can justify that. And it really ends up exposing what you're truly devoted to and what you really believe. Yeah, and it's true. Their deep reverence for God's teaching about marriage has led to a variety of contemplative and active practices of the faith. think yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think also for me, if I have to think of something that pops into my mind when I hear him describing this idea of devotion and its expression, I would say mission and service, the idea of engaging with people in different backgrounds, different contexts, different than you, try to show them something positive. That's something that really resonates with me. And it's like I think the one easy way that I could say that is, well, go be a missionary. I think that's the easy way. But there are so many other ways because I appreciate that concept so much, and it's been such a blessing in my own life. I do want to encourage other people to do that, but I've also found that there are other ways to inspire, helping, and serving others here locally. It doesn't just have to be something where there's only one way to do this. It comes back to this idea of expanding the definition of it. If someone has the mission mindset or the mission mentality I've talked about before, I think now we're talking about something where people can apply that and live that out. It's something that impacts who you are and not just the thing that you do. Because the mission mindset will be willing to go overseas to be a missionary. The mission mindset will also be someone who's willing to go and treat everyone that they see in their neighborhood street positively. That's yeah, that's what I think on that. I agree. And something else that's interesting here, talking about this narrow definition versus the expanded or the wider definition. Something interesting is that when it's a narrow definition and we exclude all of the practical expressions of it, it's almost like those things can be vilified in a sense because now we're trying to do things. If you have the wrong perspective by looking at if you have the wrong perspective while also having this narrow definition of devotion, you come across a real issue with the practical expression of your faith because you may end up taking it for granted that there should be a practical expression. In other words, take the monks and the ascetics that I mentioned before. They weren't looking to give back in the sense of they go out into these places for something that they want spiritually. They're out there, they have it. Okay, cool. It stayed there. They weren't looking to give back and to bring back into their communities the things that they had discovered. That was like against their modes. But if you're looking at this narrow thing being devotion, then all the other stuff becomes extra and fluff. And now maybe people are showing off. Now maybe you're trying to be arrogant about what you have. Maybe that's the perspective that you have on people who are trying to live out their faith because it's changing who they are. And what does it do? It ends up making you more reserved. You end up keeping more to yourself. The monks and the ascetics, same thing. And it can end up with someone having a very critical viewpoint of people who are trying to do these things to live out their faith practically. I think even in this document so far, we've seen a lot of counsel on living out the devotion and being devoted to the practices, not just the profession, but the practice of the faith. And yet, that narrow definition can make people look negatively on the practical expression of the faith as if it's too much and unnecessary. So that's an important distinction that I should probably take a note on. I need to write down his definition of this too. I think that broadening devotion in this context as well. I need to write this down while I'm thinking about it. The broader definition of devotion really allows for several multiple expressions of devotion, not just a single way to do it right. When it comes to Christianity, spirituality, I think this is where we have a big issue, right? Because a lot of religions tend to have this, it's this way. This is the way that you do it. This is what it looks like. And if you do it outside of the lines here, then you're wrong. But broadening the definition of devotion here means that you can be in harmony with what it is that you believe. But when you understand that the devotion is more than just belief, it might express itself in different ways and they can all be right. So that could be a breakthrough in the religious mindset when it comes to devotion, how it's practiced, and how much more diverse now a particular community of faith can look and how it can act within its own community. Different people have different skills, and you can be dedicated to the same thing and express and live it out in different ways. Right. See? So you can be invested in and devoted to the idea of the sanctity of life, but you can express it in different ways. There's so many different areas where that is important and needed. Different. And the good thing about that is once you have multiple people living out devotion in different ways, you make the concept of devotion more accessible for people. because now people can see themselves living out a devoted life in their context, in their way. It's just like saying, well, if someone's devoted to evangelism, then they have to be preaching. That is not everyone's skill. I forget the verse in the Testament where Paul talks about that, and he gave some this, and he gave some that, and he gave some the other. But that verse, I think, directly speaks to the variety of expression that devotion in one thing can have. And that's a beautiful thing because it means each and every one of us can find our niche, our our way of sharing something that's going to be different from the people around us and just as impactful. Because that's the other thing. I think sometimes in religion we elevate, well, if you're the pastor, then you're up at the top. And if you're doing this thing, well, you're kind of in the middle here. And if you're doing these things, but really the practical expression of devotion on any level is equally as valuable because they're all going to reach different people. Yeah, that's a good response here. What are you devoted to? I've heard people say this all the time. I'm struggling with my devotional life. And I've even been guilty of like trying to point people in, all right, check out this book or read through this because of my own narrow definition of what devotion is. But I need to write this down because I would like to remember that as well. Yeah, that's such a good question because now within the context of that spirituality, that person will be given an opportunity to find out what exactly it is within that they're devoted to, and then from there they can find ways to practically apply that or live that out. Alex, welcome back, man. You gonna join us later? Got to get some homework in now, but I'm gonna jump on later. The digital world creates a culture of distraction. This is big facts. Oh man, if it isn't so obvious, like we have our phones with us everywhere we go. We're always checking. Notifications are not going off, but we're picking it up and we're scrolling and looking for something. It's almost like maybe in an hour and a half or so, an hour and a half, and then I might get on. Depends how far I get on this. But it's so obvious how easy it is for us to get distracted. Like there's a lot I could say on that, but in short, I will say for me, because of this, I've actually started turning off my phone at night. I'm a few nights in, but I've already slept better the last few nights. And it's like I, it's hard to explain. It's not like I'm noticing if I'm getting notifications because I put it on dark, but the phone itself being on, it just means it's accessible. So if I turn over in the middle of the night and reach for my phone, it's on and I can immediately use it and become distracted while I'm trying to sleep. If it's off though, it's out of the picture. So it isn't just that it's off, but it's also knowing that it's off is preventing me from even reaching for it. It's a non-factor now. So it's less of a distraction on two levels. This thing that connects me to the digital world. Yeah, there's a novelty bias built into us that rewards us for attending the information that is new. And there's a pervasive design built into digital media that's always giving us something new to attend to. Notifications. I hate them. That's one of the reasons why I have an Apple Watch right now. I would like to switch to a Garmin because the one gripe that people have about it, oh, this doesn't have LTE, it doesn't have phone. Yeah, that's what I want. And I guess I could turn it off here, but this watch is cheaper than a Garmin, so that's why I have it. But yeah, it's like notifications are annoying, man. And every single app you have on your phone wants to give you notifications for something. They know this. The more they can keep you looking at stuff, it's just it becomes a hook and you can't get off the hook. And most of the notifications we're not going to act on. They're not giving it they oh man, that's such a good point. They're so good at making us feel like we're missing out on something and we're not missing out on anything. I could look at my phone right now. Let's look at these notifications. Uh Something is from team chat here. Okay. Something's from LinkedIn. Something is from Twitch, Journal, from Be Real, TikTok, YouTube, Strava, getting notifications about people posting on my timeline. It's my birthday, so that makes sense. Notifications from this group chat, a meeting I was in earlier. The other, like, this is all good stuff, but it's not stuff. The fact that I still have all these notifications here, I'm getting blasted with them, but I didn't do anything with them. So each one of these, let's see, each one of these notifications is some kind of indicator that I'm missing out on something. There's something new I need to attend to, something new I need to pay attention to, and yet they're all here because they're not impacting me in that way. They don't. And more often than not, I'll find myself scrolling through here just to delete the notifications because I don't want the notifications popping up on my screen. Hold up. I dropped that on something. Just trying to make a point, but you get what I'm saying. This is true. It's a true statement. And, even on that point, the irony is that for all the notifications that I have, for a lot of people, they might feel like nothing's happening if they aren't getting bombarded with notifications and they won't check them anyway. And yet they might even be checking their phones more often if they don't have notifications and feel like there's a problem because they don't have any notifications. So it's like, what has society done to us, man? Right. And this is absolutely true. Because these things keep us bouncing all over the place, we end up really struggling with really staying in a moment because we're always looking for the next thing. This is life for us these days. Yeah, we are professionals at being and staying distracted. Which, to the point here, I think this is where he's going, but it's going to make it harder for us not only to get the input of devotion, but also to express the output of it. If we're so distracted by everything that's coming at us, how in the world, like, it's hard for us today even to know what we are devoted to because there's so many things that we're bombarded with. We see this, we agree with that, okay, cool. We see the next thing, we agree with that, oh, okay, cool. And because we don't spend time deeply thinking about something, it's so easy for the next trend or the next surface level idea to get us expressing something and saying something, thinking it's true, and it's really the most shallow thing out there. Or because we buy into these narratives, these shallow narratives, we start seeing the world through this lens, and everything that keeps on flicking back and forth through our minds and through our phones and through our computers and through our notifications, we start interpreting everything through that lens, and we don't end up actually thinking critically on how we're responding to that. So yeah, this is a good part here too, because the Bible app, um, I've seen commercials or ads about they're trying to get 1 million downloads, and that's cool, but it's on the phone. So if you're on the phone and you're using that, and now you have, while you're trying to be in a moment of devotion, you have all of the potential distraction right there in your hand as well. And I think what's fascinating about this is we've even seen from how the Bible app curates its own content. Um, Most of the readings are short. The daily videos that they give you for devotions are short, 2 minutes. So even in that sense, it's curated with distraction in mind. So how are you really going to develop an understanding or a deep connection with what it is that you're studying or what you're reading, whatever the Bible verse is or the concept is for that day, if the video starts 2 minutes later, it's done, and you're on to the next thing while getting other distractions and notifications as you're listening? It's hard. It's hard to do, if impossible. So this piece right here, being intentional about its use. If you're gonna do that, like for me, putting my phone in dark mode is something I do all the time because I don't get any notifications now. I went for a run this morning, and the first thing I do when I go on a run, I'll have my phone in my pocket because I may be playing either like a podcast or a longer form YouTube video or some music, but I put it in dark mode because I don't want notifications. I hate getting notifications when I'm running. I hate it. It's like I want I want this watch to give me a notification when I've hit a mile, when it's comparing my mile pace to the mile previous. That's it. That's the only thing I want. I don't want this thing buzzing on my wrist for Discord notifications. Don't want that. And the first time it does, if I have to stop to pull my phone out of my pocket and turn that thing on dark mode to turn off all the notifications, like I don't want it. We can use the digital spaces, the digital media, but we have to be intentional about how we're doing it. Yeah, that's deep, but it's true. You think of like social media, people be posting personal stuff like going through this hard time and blah blah blah. And it's easy to go onto the post. Facebook, I can show you what I'm talking about here. For an example, I can put it whoops, I can put anybody out there in particular. But let's say right here we have this, right? Shout out Fabletics. So you have these posts that come up where it's people sharing with you something from their experience, something that's important to them. And I actually don't have to, even though I'm friends with these people here on Facebook, I don't have to be engaged with them or anything of their experience to give a 2-second response and keep it pushing. I can like it along with the other 45 people and I can keep scrolling. So it's like things like that. If I was in person, as the guy's saying here, and I tend to agree, if I was in person with that guy and his family, I wouldn't be able to just give a thumbs up and keep it pushing. There would be much more of an experience happening there. I can take graduation yesterday as an example, graduation up here at Andrews. And I already knew I was going to be in trouble because the main reason that I went was for one of my students who I had taught in Palau years ago, and she came here to be a student and is graduating. So absolutely amazing. Proud of her. Shout out Belena for all that she had been able to accomplish. But it turned out that a lot of other people that I had worked with in my time since being here at Andrews were also graduating. Several members of the gymnastics team, a few members of the team. I'm an assistant coach for that team. They they were graduating, and a number of them, and even people when I worked in the dorm as RAs, resident advisors, they were graduating. So I had a bunch of different people saying, "Hey, come to this party, come to this party, come to this party," and there were at least four that I was invited to, and it's like I can either say something super slim in a text message or to the invite to respond, but if I actually go in person there, it's not going to be a quick thing. And I experienced that because I went to the first one, I was there for like an hour and a half. Went to the next one to drop in, and I was there for like 10, 15 minutes before going to the last one, and I was there for a little bit longer than that. And because I went to the first one, I ended up missing another one. So it's like we social media fools us into thinking that we can engage like this on this super quick, super superficial level, but we aren't really doing anything. And yet, because it's a consumer society, we feel like success if we got a bunch of numbers from people that we may or may not have connected with in a meaningful way at all. Guarantee you. And this is kind of the tail of the tape. He said if I had been with her in person, that would not have happened. Most of the things that we do and say in a social media space, if we were with the person in person, would not have happened. So we got to think about these things. And then as a result, we need to think about how we want to use social media and how we want it to impact us. We want to use it, or do we want to get used by it? Got to think about that. Yeah. Click here, empathy. I can't even tell you how many times from my own, like speaking personally, I might have said something like, "I'll pray for you," or I'll drop the praying hands emoji on somebody's post. And yeah, in the moment, I meant that 100%, but in the next few seconds as I scroll, I've already forgotten about it. I know I'm not the only one. I, I'm not the only one. I know that for a fact. Yeah, yeah, this is a good one too. They be getting me at Taco Bell with this. You want to round up for the Taco Bell Foundation? Yeah, sure. I've probably done it like 6 or 7 times. Do I know what the Taco Bell Foundation is for? No. They got me. They got me. I'm not being drawn deeper into the relational experience of the Taco Bell Foundation. Yeah, media platforms, they're built for speed, not slow processing. So, speed and communication, yeah, but not actual processing. That's not good. And we have to realize that and make the necessary adjustments. Texting somebody for 15 minutes is not the same thing as hanging out with somebody for 15 minutes. Person. Yeah. Responding to a post about people starving is nowhere near the same as going to be around the people who are starving. So, if devotion is something that's calling us into a deep relationship and reflection with God, then it's something that we have to break through the distraction to find. That's what I need to take my. I think I've gone through this whole section without taking an entire note, without taking a single note so far. Okay, disenchantment. Let's see what this section is about. Okay. I'd like to see this painting. What painting are we talking about here? Joe, don't tell, right? Jesse, Stephen Howley, Steve Harvey. No, Steve Howley. big one. Oh, Steve Hawley website. Now we're talking. That is really weird. That's a strange picture. Oh, whoa, whoa. Get this creepy junk out of here. Oh, what's going on, man? Go back. It definitely has a distinct style. All right. We got the picture up. Let's talk through this thing while we're looking at it. Okay. Disenchantment. You'd like us to consider this painting. At first glance, the painting looks like a still life. Okay. Definitely. Sees colorful fruit on a black table. On further reflection, however, the painting begins to play with your imagination. Ali has created a sharp contrast between the foreground and the background. Yeah, definitely. The foreground is painted realistically. That's this part down here. See a table with lemon, some gourds, and a cup. Holly has carefully attended to detail. Table is painted so realistically that you can see the reflection of the lemon and the gourds on the black enamel of the table. In the background, however, you have an abstraction. Crucifixion of Jesus painted on a piece of paper that is fixed to the wall. The crucifixion is formed with bold lines and thick brushstrokes. Yep, did a pretty decent job describing it here. That's not easy to do, but show, don't tell. You cannot make out the face of Jesus. The only thing realistic about the background is the masking tape. Oh, that is really weird. Yeah, like these pieces of tape stand out like almost more than this. Masking tape suggests that the religion is removable, not permanent. It is something abstract and tortured that you can put up or take down in its presence or removal does not change what is realistic and sitting on the table. Interesting. This represents one way of thinking about disenchantment. The world exists and can be known apart from God. Interesting. Interesting. Funny. Yeah, this concept of disenchantment, I got to read more on this, obviously, because it makes sense, but it's kind of a new concept to me in this context. But generally, yeah, like you do have people who, and maybe the majority of the world, maybe that's the point. It's like where, from my worldview and perspective, I believe that God created all of us and everything. So that's like my reference point. But for other people who don't believe that, they have different ways, different things that they're looking at to describe and to define these things for themselves. So communicating with someone from that different worldview and perspective can be interesting. And so in this illustration here, I guess this is an illustration. He's telling a story of what really happened. So Annabelle would see this painting here as realistic, maybe nailed to the wall. But the mom would have fit in with this painting in exactly the way that it's illustrated here. Milk chocolate caramel. I shouldn't, but I am. I'm gonna get some watermelon later. Oh, 9 grams of carbs? Yeah, that's a good point. Living in the culture of disenchantment in this context where the majority of the people see God as not connected to us or not existing at all, devotion as a practice has a chance to kind of rewrite the script in that regard. So we can live in ways that help people to consider or maybe question, wait a second, like I said before, what is it about this way that you live and the things that you're doing? What do you really believe? Because whatever it is, it doesn't match what I believe. I think that's coming back to the beauty of what um, the lived out experience of practical devotional life, this broader definition of devotion, can speak to. I need to write this down. I cannot. I'm sorry. I got to get through most of this document, so I'll probably be in here for another hour or so. School first. School first. No sugar for a night. And it's true. The way that we live, and this is true for anybody with anything, the way that you live and the way that you express yourself will undoubtedly have an impact on how other people see the world. We may not believe that to be true. We may not think that our actions have that much of an impact, but they do. So that's something worth being aware of, at least. If you don't plan on changing anything about what you do, it's at least worth being aware of. Excuse me. Whoops. Wrong pipe. All right, back to the painting. Upon first glance, the painting presents us with a disenchanted world. The realistic foreground of the table is separated from the abstract figure of Christ, crucified in the background, held up by masking tape on a wall. If you look closely, however, you will notice one detail that depicts what I'm calling devotional discovery in a disenchanted world. The torso of the crucified Christ is near the center of the painting. From his side, bright red blood pours forth right here. Your eye follows the blood. You see that it flows from the painting, masking tape to the wall, into the cup on the table. Oh, look at that. The inside is painted a similar red. We discovered that this realistic world, which we thought was disenchanted, is suddenly penetrated by the gracious work of God. That's pretty dope. Okay. I'm sitting out here hating on this painting, but it's I like that. I like that. The cup on the table begins to look like a chalice, inviting us to taste and see that the Lord is good. Perhaps the painting of the crucifixion is abstract, not because it is not real, but because God Himself is a mystery beyond our comprehension. Beyond our comprehension. All that we can ever know is what He has revealed when we see Jesus dying on the cross. Suddenly, we discover that Christ's divine suffering shapes our experience of this world. Ordinary life is penetrated in an extraordinary way. Pretty dope. I wonder, because this thing is called Root of Jesse. I wonder how he got that background and that understanding for this painting, because that's a lot. It's dope, but it's a lot. I would love to see what the source for that is. Yeah, I think this part here, Martin Luther and what he's doing with this scriptural imaginary, I think that's pretty cool because I would argue that things like this House of David show, The Chosen, things like that are playing into that. Um, and I think it's interesting how you have people who are so critical of it when it's somebody's idea. They're looking at more from a theological and disagreeing with their own personal theology there, which I can understand. But my question would be, if you're going to get mad at someone else's imagination, spiritual, scriptural imaginary at work, what are you doing with yours? Are you just going to sit around and criticize everyone else's? Or are you going to paint a picture that matches what you see in scripture in a spiritual sense. Yeah, I might this brokenness and blessing. What are those? Francis Young. I'm gonna order this book. Curious. Because yeah, talk about that later. But I did just order this book. Legit. I think this could be meaningful for me. Yeah. So particularly, I'll just say in short, I think of the situation with my mom, and that's why I want to check out this book. I think it could give me some insights there that will be helpful. Perspective shifter. That's important, man. All right, I think this is the last section. All right. Another half an hour or so here. Wrap this thing up. Let's get it. Disillusionment. Telling how people have fallen away from faith. Reflections of Christians who are following away. Oh, are. Got you. Okay. Close, but not quite the same thing. In the moment. Yeah, that's different. Got a lot I could say on this. Yeah, I will say from the jump, this is a big thing. Not just obviously in spiritual, but across the board. First, the disillusioned desire to be heard, and more, and how hard it is to gain a hearing. Even that right there, it's like you can become disillusioned with anything when this happens. It can be, in my case, I've seen it happen in profession. I've seen it happen in friendship. I've seen it happen in relationship. I've seen it happen with family. Like we've all seen this happen across so many different areas where someone is trying to be heard and they don't feel like they're being heard. And so they're out. It's disillusionment because this is supposed to be this way, but because they're not being heard, it isn't like that anymore. And this thing that you thought you were entitled to or thought that you should get, you're not getting. So it totally changes the view on that, and you end up responding in accordance with that. Yes. And this is, I have an issue with this. This idea of someone struggling, that doesn't fit the narrative. So no room for you to talk anymore. I can't stand that because it isn't real. And it's pretty disingenuous to someone's actual lived experience, right? Think about Jesus and the was it the paralytic at the pool? 38 years he was dealing with that. Like it wasn't just, hey man, you got to pray a little bit more. Like people looked at him, especially in that context. People were looking at anyone who had these issues like, well, the reason you're here is because someone else sinned or you didn't do enough, all this kind of stuff. And they were already beyond being fixed, like broken. But even when it came to offering to people in these situations, that's how they treated them. These things are happening to you because of this. Look at Job. These things are happening to you because of this. Do this, change this, and you'll get it right. And it turns out that none of those friends for those whole monologues that they went on were absolutely useless. What up, Scotty? How you know it's my birthday today, man? How'd you know that? Shout out to Scotty, man. I probably told you, but I forgot. I feel like I kept it on a pretty low profile today for the most part. Right. But see, that's the difference. Because when oh true, 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 true. I forgot about that. That birthday run, 5 miles. We out here. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Like, oh man, I need to write this down. I'm doing a lot of talking, not a lot of writing. This is what I should have said. All right, man. I'll see you in a bit. I got another half an hour here. I'm gonna finish up this article and then I'll be ready. Like, I keep going back to this because it was my own experience, right? Growing up in church, having questions that I didn't feel were being answered. I had like the cookie cutter answers. Okay, cool. But the questions that I had, and when I was looking at my life and different challenges and things I was going through, and like, hey, man, I don't think that God is coming through for me. I was being disillusioned. My perspective was being changed because it's like I'm doing all these things right. I'm reading through the whole Bible. I'm reading through these devotions. I'm doing the Sabbath school lesson. I'm praying and I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm not getting the result that I was looking for in those moments. I was in a spot where I could easily have said on a day-to-day basis, I believe, help my unbelief. Like that's where I was. I was very disillusioned growing up, and it didn't feel like there was space within the religion for those kinds of questions. I didn't openly ask these kind of questions. I kind of just went on my own path. That's why I don't blame where I grew up as much as I realized like it was who I was in that space is what resulted in my response to spirituality in that space. I was looking for things more from an output or an outcome standpoint rather than the input. I wasn't connecting the two. I was like, if I do this, then I should get this. And that's not the way that spirituality works. So obviously, it wasn't working for me. But it's like the very thing that helped me turn that around and become less and less disillusioned to the point of professing full faith again was the experiences that I had, the people that I talked to who allowed me to ask these questions, and kind of my own growth to where I became comfortable asking and expressing the questions because that's what paved a path for me to learn and discover and to see for myself within my own perspective what was really true. I put myself out there literally in those Atlanta streets to do the work and to canvas and to see if this stuff was real or not, to see if God was real or not. And in those moments where I believed, but I was full of unbelief, God helped me to see something. But it's like clearly the scriptures show us that there's room for that. And yet, a lot of time in spirituality and religion these days, if somebody expresses that they have unbelief, we tell them, "Hey, you need to do more of this, or you're not good enough." In like we have all this negative stuff to say about people who both call themselves a believer but struggle with their belief. And it isn't fair because it isn't biblical to respond to people like that. Yeah, you look at the book of Psalms, David, how often did he express things like this? All the time, all the time. And yet David was a man after God's own heart. What are we talking about? You see him like living out this experience constantly. He's going back and forth between these great victories and these positive things that he sees where God is coming through and amazing. And then these other parts where it's like, God, where you at, man? I'm struggling out here. Where you at? That's one of the reasons why Psalms as a book is my favorite book, because I feel like you get the complete experience of what it means to be someone after God's own heart. And it's not this surface level fake, you got to be perfect and believe all the time type of thing. There's room for questions, there's room for doubt, there's room for the pain, there's room for the sadness, there's room for the discouragement, there's room for all of that with God. And He invites those things. And when Christians don't invite those things, we are not being very Christ like. There has to be space for that within spirituality. It's biblical. It's like I think something that frustrated me and maybe still to a degree frustrates me is like, yo man, if things are bad, if things are frustrating, they can be bad and frustrating and you can feel bad and you can feel frustrated. There's room for that. You don't have to put on this face and fake like everything's cool. You can still have faith and you can still believe that God will come through while still being frustrated. Those things are not mutually exclusive. But for Christianity and for people who are trying to make something practical for people, you have to make room for these two things to exist in harmony. They have to, because again, it's biblical. And I think that's one of the main things that leads to this disillusionment, right? Because we feel these emotions and these things that are natural to humans. And then we get told that you're not supposed to feel that way. Otherwise, it's a sign that you don't have faith. And yet we have this statement here, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. People skip right over that and what it means. I need to write that down, man. Here we go. Talking again. Yeah. Look at this. Some days I'm not sure if my faith is riddled with doubt or whether graciously my doubt is riddled with faith. It's like it reminds me of this quote. Um, I think it's chapter one, Steps to Christ. Ellen White talks about the the thorns are covered with roses. She's referring to the rose bush, but it's a perspective thing. Um, are the roses covered with thorns, or are the thorns covered with roses? all about perspective and how you see things and what you're looking for in life, what your focus is. Is it about this stuff primarily and the other stuff is just a background, or is it vice versa? Yeah. Like I said, I can speak to that because I became pretty agnostic in my own right in high school, early college, but experiences that I had, it changed my perspective. It helped me to see things in a different way and it brought me back. I had to be open to that though. Not everybody is. But I happened to be in places where I was surrounded by people and leaders who lived in a certain way where I could see the reality of what they believed in, that this thing was true for them in a way that it wasn't true for me. So it pushed me to try to find out how I could be that kind of person. And in that pursuit, I was able to find something that brought me back into that reality. They say perception is reality, right? I think that's the quote. But it's like it works on both sides because if somebody perceives that there isn't anything good for them, everything's against them, life is always trying to keep them down, well, that's their reality and that's the only thing they're going to be able to see. They're going to say, "Yeah, there's roses, but they're all covered with thorns." But if you surround yourself with people who have a different perspective and perhaps I would argue a better perspective, your perspective your perspective shifts. It's like, yeah, there's these thorns out there, but they're actually covered with roses. There's more of those than these things. And I can see something different. So I can pursue something different. I can live in a different way. I think that's powerful. Yeah, I like that. This is speaking to what this is exactly what I was experiencing. Like this perspective, like devotion, if all the thoughts are coming through and I'm getting all these great insights, oh man, it's on point. Let's go. And on days where I'm not feeling it, whatever, I'm not doing it. I woke up late, oh well. But this roommate in this sense, yeah, I think it's more about that. It's like you make the time and the space for it, less because it's a duty, and it's like less because it's based on my feelings and orientation towards it, but it's more because you just want to put yourself in that space because being in that space is the win. That's the thing when it comes to abiding and that concept that really has blown my mind over the last couple months now. It's like that's what he's describing. I'm just trying to abide. Am I interested in it right now? No, but I'm just trying to abide. I'm bringing myself to this place, and whether it's something that's super awesome and insightful, or whether it's a nothing burger, I'm just trying to abide, and that's where the win is. So I do think it's both. Like obviously you do want to be interested and enjoy it, but just because you're not doesn't mean it's worthless. Two things can be true. Yeah, and that's where it can get tricky because it's like ideally you would hope that your life isn't just going through the motions like indefinitely, but it does speak to the fact that it's harder to develop a sense of being out of doing. It's much easier to do things without being a certain way. But if you widen kind of like what we're talking about in this article, broadening the definition of devotion, right? If you broaden what it means to be, and maybe you take a step back on being, what does it mean to be right in this way? Or like if maybe if we take a step back from that, we can find that there's room in that being for some of that monotony and some of that repetitiveness without the feeling. Like it's pulling to something. Because whether you enjoy it or not, it's like working out. Whether you enjoy it or not, some people do, some people don't. But for people in pursuit of something who do it, they stay consistent because they know what it's going to do for them. Whether they enjoy it or not, they stick with it. It's like Michael Phelps talking about his swimming experience and how he was in the pool like every day for how many years in a row. And he wasn't always feeling it, but he did it because of who he wanted to be. And oddly enough, even in those moments where he didn't feel like he wanted to do it, even that in and of itself was him being the person he needed to be for the future. He wouldn't have become that person in the future if he didn't suck it up and do it on the days when he didn't like it in that moment. That's an extreme case, but I think it goes to prove the point that doing rarely, if ever, contributes directly to being. and it's a lot harder to, much harder to go at it from that side. But being, there's room for the feeling it, the not feeling it, the interested, the disinterested. There's room within the being for that going through the motions because of what you ultimately believe. So I would agree with this. Disciplines of devotion are a way of life for the disillusioned when everything else has been shattered. Some might call it hypocrisy. I would call it hope. I agree. I agree. Right. On one hand, going through the motions is not ideal. It's not. But on the other hand, going through the motions is not necessarily bad, particularly when the motions are worth going through. That's what it is. Yeah, that's a good point. Good Friday's got its own holiday. Easter Sunday's got its own holiday. What we talking about on Saturday though? It's a time when disillusionment and discipline are joined together. Everything that you staked your life on and your belief system on is gone. And yet you're still going through the motions, so to speak, just hoping that's what it is, hoping that this stuff is true. They didn't know what was going to happen. Jesus tried to tell them so many times and they just didn't get it. So we can't read the story from the standpoint and say, "Oh, these disciples were good to go. They knew it was going to be on the third day, no problem." Because everything that followed from that, everything about what we see of their actions, does not align with any kind of idea that they knew what was going to happen. They were scared because they thought it was over. They thought they were next. In the midst of this, they follow along with what he asked them to do. And fortunately for them, they were able to see the result of it sooner than later. Devotion can create hope. Practical devotion can create hope for the disillusioned. I'm almost done with this. I'll get on in a bit. All true. Good points. And yeah, I like this. When we live a way of life that is called hope, it isn't just an individual experience that now I'm hopeful in this. That's why I'm continuing to do these things. When I live with hope, it opens up the door for more people who are distracted to focus in and say, what is it that this person is hopeful for? For the people who are, what was the other one? Disillusioned, for people to say, you know what? There's something there that I'm missing. Disenchanted, something you believe something. What is that thing? You're living with a positivity and you're operating with a sense of something that's bigger than what we're going through right now. I I think that's what this broader definition of what it means to be devoted can do. I agree. I agree. Good stuff. So that's the last one. So next up, I got all my notes here. These are just the notes that I took after reading each article. This thing is, well, it's 5 pages single spaced. The assignment was supposed to be 6 pages double spaced. So I'm looking at probably 10 or 11 after I summarize, reformat, and summarize this stuff. But yeah, got all the reading done, got the assignment done. Well, got the work done to complete the assignment, I should say, because I haven't turned in anything yet. But hey, man, we out here coming up soon, taking the next step in the doctoral journey. One assignment at a time, baby. Let's go. I'll see you in the next stream. I'll be on and